This is so exciting. Raymond is on my program. How are you, Raymond?
Hi, I'm very well. How are you?
I'm great. I'm right here in Singapore, in Asia. So I've been looking forward to having this one-to-one conversation with you since, I don't know, when I was 16 years old, when I picked up my first ever KMFDM album. I think it was Nihil, of course. And the whole store were playing your record. And I fell in love with your song, Disobedience.
Oh, I remember that one. Yeah, I like that one. That's a good one.
Yeah, and Ultra and so many other great tracks, right? And in Singapore, we are actually hearing KMDM songs, right, on TV as well, because it was used as one of the introduction music in a sports program. So to join Jezebel was like being played like weekly during the trailers as well. So there's no way to escape, your presence and of course your mastery in all these great KMFDM tracks.
Well,
so I'm really excited right now.
I'm really glad to hear that, and I'm glad you enjoyed that album. It did seem to be a sort of coming together of a lot of people who were sort of at the top of their game. There was a little sort of moment there where it just all the beams intersected to create that album.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the benefit of those in Asia where I'm residing in, and of course, this live stream is going out to LinkedIn as well. So there are many people that we need to introduce you properly to. And of course, Raymond Watts is an English musician, the founding and sole member of the post-industrial music project PIG, sometimes written as Pig and Case in Diamonds, right? So Watts was an early member and periodic collaborator of KMFDM and has been a visible part of the industrial music scene since the early 1980s. He has also scored music for Alexander McQueen shows, as well as installations and exhibitions. His new album, Pain is God, is released this month, and I have to admit, confession time, it has been basically on repeat on my smart speakers for the past 5 to 6 days. It's an incredible album. I love it.
Well, I'm really glad you like it. That's really good to hear that it resonates with you and it works on some level, because for me, when I finished it, it's rather like my relationship with the songs ends, and I think of it almost as like putting them in little coffins, nailing them shut, or making each one is the process of making like a jam and putting it in a jar and sealing the lid and then putting it on the shelf. And if somebody opens it, and then it has a life inside of them and beyond. But for me, the relationship finishes when the masters are sent off to the record label. It's kind of an interesting thing. It starts for you and it kind of finishes for me. It's weird.
And we're so excited that you've been so active in the past 3-4 years, and I think it basically caps off with this incredible new album, right? I love songs like Deliverance and Mobilecracy was one of my favorite, and of course Sex and Death as well. So can you walk us through the creation process? Are the recent upheavals in terms of the politics and the current state of the world an influence on how you're actually crafting these songs in the studio in the past couple of months before you deliver this album?
Well, the majority of the words were written before this pandemic struck, although some people think some of the lyrical themes are directly about it. And I think they were shaped, sort of a little bit edited during this year. And most of it was written over about the last 24 months. The song Suffer No More, I actually wrote a long time ago in about 2005. The lyrics I put together last year, though. So, and sometimes it starts mainly with me with a lyrical idea, like a song title or a motif or a little couplet, and then the music comes afterwards. Sometimes it's the other way around. And sometimes they arrive fully formed in my head, and I just have to. Instead, it's just the laborious task of making them. Sex and Death, for example, rather like the song "Find It, Fuck It, Forget It" from the Swining album in '93, I think it was. It's sort of, I know exactly what I want to do. It's all in there, all the lyrics, and how I want it to sound, and then it's just a question of sort of laboriously building it up.
This is fantastic, and we have to talk a bit more about this album, especially the title track, Pain is God. I mean, it immediately reminds me of a Nine Inch Nails song, I think, hit like a hole, which isn't a bad thing, yeah. And of course, the composition is wonderfully heavy mix of industrial metal with the repetition of "My pain is good, my pain is God." Yeah. So I'm just glad that your lyrics are as uncompromising as ever. And of course, there's another album that we have to plug as well. It's the anniversary of the Black Mass EP, right? That was released on this date. I think maybe 1 year to the day yesterday. By I'm a Light as well. Can you tell us more about Black Mass as well?
Well, I mean, I've always liked a cheesy pop song. And I mean, I've always loved George Michael and Wham, so I really wanted to do his song Last Christmas, but give it a sort of pig tilt. And I worked with my good friend Eden, who did a lot of the orchestration and the programming, and he produced it. I worked with him on these songs, and I just think it's great to take to do it. It was primarily, I wanted to do something that generated money for people who were in a really bad situation. So I wanted to give the money to the International Rescue Committee. So all the money that comes in for that goes directly to them. And so it's the money's for refugees and displaced people. And I figured that was particularly at the time when we did it, actually 2 years ago, not a year ago, in light of what was going on, the sort of increasing sort of xenophobia and sort of distancing, sort of the idea of the other politically, it was always the other, with the bad people. And I really, sort of the negative connotation. And, I remember Trump had made this really awful fuss about these displaced people who were coming up through Central America to the border there of the United States, and I just thought it was just awful. He claims to be a Christian, and of course, sorry to waffle on here, but the idea that I just wanted to, helping displaced people and refugees is really, I suppose, a lot of the kind of the message of Christmas. I'm not a Christian, but I think, isn't it about that there was this idea of, wasn't Mary taken in and given a room in an inn, and it's the idea of welcoming and sort of, and anyway, I'm sort of going off topic here, but I sort of wanted to do a cheesy pop song and do it for a good cause, and that's it.
It's definitely for a very good cause, and many who are tuning into this live stream, right? They are commenting, that Black Mass is the best Christmas album of all time, and I 100% agree as well. And for anyone who are really interested to also join the cause, they can go to peakindustries.com, right, and download it now. As I think every cent goes to International Rescue Committee to help refugees and displaced people, right?
Yeah.
So this is a very good cause, and of course, to this day is the only Christmas music that I'll listen to. So with Christmas around the corner, I'll be putting that record and putting on repeat again. So this question that I have to ask you, actually submitted by our fan group communities. In the community, we have tons of people who recently, got really excited that you're coming onto the program, and they would love to ask you questions as follow. So the first one is submitted by Jeremiah. He actually has 3 questions for you. So let's try to cover as many as possible, right? He would like to ask you about meeting Trent Reznor and your time on Nothing and Interscope. We know that, you've been through many labels before, and probably this would segue to our next question as well about whether, labels are still significant in this day and age when musicians could probably, monetize what they love to do for a living, right? And even do streams on Twitch or even on this format, and being able to live, a comfortable life. So we want to ask you about your experience first during the time with Trent Reznor and Nothing Records. Maybe even tell some stories about TVT experience and right now.
I mean, to me, it was a very busy time for me in the 90s. I was doing a lot of stuff in Japan, and I had a really great relationship with my labels over there. And I'd been on tour opening for a few dates with Trent, I think in '94, and he just came back and said, can we do your record Sensation in the US? And he just had this label, and he just wanted to support people he wanted to support. And I said, yeah, of course. I mean, I was I would spend most of my life, I didn't sit there going, I just thought, great, if they'd give it a platform in America. I don't think that, he was busy doing his day-to-day job of Nine Inch Nails at the time. And I think the people who did the day-to-day job of running the label, which was, it was under Interscope. I don't think they really knew or gave a monkeys who Pig were. They didn't really know what to do with it. They gave it a bit of a platform, and that was it.
And this is a great time to also ask you about how it was, when you were with different record labels like TVT, and of course now with Metropolis and Armalite, right? So, can you tell us, what's the difference between working with different labels?
Well, I mean, at the moment, I'm really lucky because I did stop making music for a long time, and I didn't even know that when I had to release a record in 2016, I didn't even know Metropolis were in business. I just was not interested in music for like over 10 years, like, industrial music or whatever you want to call it. So I was surprised that they were still around, and they said, yeah, of course we'd like to put out an album, and that was called Gospel, that one. But when it came to doing vinyl, I'm very lucky to work with a label called Armalite here in London, and Giles, the chap who runs it, is really behind me when I go. Metropolis don't really like to do the vinyls. They like to do the CDs, and they're really supportive, and they've got a bigger reach. Armalite, I go, okay, I mean, I want to do an album, and this one's called Risen, and I want to have a 3D lenticular image on the front, and I want this and that. And instead of Armalite going, oh, that's going to cost the earth, they go, great, that sounds really, really fabulous. Let's do it. I mean, people can still get the digital download for relatively whatever they cost, $1 a track or whatever it is. And some people want the kind of fully bespoke, all, whistles and bells vinyl thing, which I like doing, because music doesn't have to be, it can come on a compact disc, it can come as a download code. I've released an EP, which was just a piece of silver jewelry with a download code, a unique download code on each one. You can put a download card on the side of a banana. It doesn't matter. But I still think music is, you can't see it. It's magic. But you might as well, sometimes you want to put it in a nice box. Not necessarily Pandora's box, but a beautiful thing. Just, music is like it's sort of like it can be annoying, it can be a cage, it can be a thorn in your side, it can be like honey, it can help you through the hardest times, it can take you back to the best times. It's like a time traveling machine. It's a magic, weird thing, music. It's an extraordinary thing. I mean, certain bits of music take me back to times in my life far more immediately than a Polaroid would. So sometimes, it will lay down foundations for memories and things or whatever. It can do a lot of things. It can be a life raft music. It can be a ladder. It can be a fucking well. It can be a place you descend to. But sometimes I just think it deserves a really nice box.
Well said. Do you get a lot, from fans? Especially, I know that you have huge following, especially in Japan. So many Rabbit and Royal fans will probably also stalk you, right? So, do you get a lot, from fans who come out to you and say that some of your music actually saved their lives, or like maybe listening to a song like Deliverance, for example, probably have conjured up different feelings, right? Probably for some people who are maybe in dark moments, right? Sometimes it could be that song or that melody or that hook or the lyric that actually, make them do a U-turn and actually not do, very mad things like committing suicide. You get a lot of that from your fans?
I mean, not a lot, but it's always deeply touching when people do just tell you that certain tracks or albums have got them through difficult, really challenging times in their lives. And of course, it's truly humbling. And it's kind of extraordinary. It's really quite extraordinary when people tell you that, and it kind of puts it into context, really, of how extraordinary music can be.
Perfect. And of course, there appears that you have a great run of creativity in the past 3-4 years since you came back after taking a break of, I don't know, 11, 12 years. So
Yeah,
what's
about 12 years.
inspired you to get back in the saddle, so to speak? This question is submitted by Rory Bell, by the way.
Sorry, I missed that. Why did I get back in the saddle?
What inspired you to get back in the saddle?
Well, I had a massive, many drug habits for many years. And I nearly died in 2015, and I was really in a bad state. I was in and out of hospital for a while, and, you know, and I turned yellow, and I'd really hit the buffers. And when I came out of that, and when I came out of rehab, I didn't really know what I was going to do. It's kind of quite interesting when your whole life sort of seems to be like a sort of nuclear wasteland. You know, sometimes the only, and I can, you know, having spent years and years in addiction, the only thing on the landscape that looks like a cherry, you know, can be a bag of brown powder or a white powder or a barrel of booze or bottle of pills or whatever. When you take them away, it seems like there's nothing left. So what are you going to do? Luckily, I was asked to go and do a gig. I mean, thought I was done with Pig completely. I'd been dead for ages. I got asked to do a gig. I called up Enesh and Gunter Schultz, two of my cohorts from the KMFDM days. And they said, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. And then before I knew it, they were going, well, if we're going to rehearse for one show, let's do 5, let's do 20. Before I knew it, we were on tour in the States. The booking agent said, well, you better have an album. And I said, well, no, I haven't got an album. He said, well, you better have an album to promote. So I got in touch with Zemar from Combi Christ. He came over and we bashed out the gospel together. He was really helpful, helped co-write some stuff with me. And that was the thing. And it started going. And then I called up Metropolis and I was really surprised. Oh, you're still in business, are you? Yeah, we'd like a record. Boom. So, you know, I think part of the scaling of what I was going to do with my life, putting it in a context, was realizing, you know, having someone to love, having something to do and having something to look forward to. Well, my relationship with music and Pig kind of covers quite a lot of that. So it seemed like it just took me over again.
It's a brilliant answer. And of course, we know that it's during adversity, right? The beautiful things will start to happen again, start to grow. So yeah, we are really excited with this Pain is God album. And John Stockman has this question. What recent events, if any, inspired you to create Pain is God?
What recent events? Well, really, I mean, I don't really like to question it too much or analyze it. I mean, to me, you know, the words have become more and more important as time goes on. I mean, I love a full-on massive juggernaut of a guitar riff as much as the next person. But the kind of words to me are the handle on the suitcase. Do you know what I mean? I need a handle on it. You know, this can be, you know, the case can be full of the most fabulous, gut-wrenching, guttural, you know, stomach clenching, buttock clenching rock riffs. But if I don't have a handle on it, if I don't have something that's come from here, then I kind of don't need to. Anyone can do the balls to the wall rock and roll stuff or rock riffs. And I don't question, if this answers the question, I don't really question where the stuff comes from lyrically. It just comes to me when I'm out walking the dog. I don't really, or whatever I'm doing, and I don't sort of analyze it. It just, luckily, it's there. Don't know where it comes from. So it's not particularly like what, you know, I just can't get into analyzing it too much. Stuff comes out of me and I've got to write it down and do it.
And we need to ask you the next question. Like, we're now doing this one-to-one conversation, right? So how often do you have like spirited conversations with people who know how hard it is and yet how good it feels to really connect with one another?
Oh, I don't know if I have those kind of conversations that often. Probably not enough, actually. Like, that's all I can say.
As in, during the pandemic lockdown, right? Everyone is like stuck at home, so it's like the only way to really connect is to do live streams or to do a Zoom, or to just pick up the goddamn phone and just talk to each other or video call, right? So do you do a lot of that more than last year?
I suppose necessity, yeah, necessity. Some things. I mean, ostensibly, when the pandemic, arrived like a fucking meteorite, my life pretty much carried on as it was before. It was me writing in this small space and sending files to the people I was collaborating with, sending files to Nick in Berlin and Steve White, who I was working together again with, he's in Seattle, and Michelle, my vocalist, in Australia. So connection obviously has been facilitated by Zoom or whatever, and that's a great thing. That's a really, really great thing. I mean, I prefer the real thing, of course.
Me too. It's a pinch me moment to have technology during these unpredictable times, right? And being able to talk to your hero. So I'm like, 16-year-old me is jumping up and down right now that we have already talked for 20 minutes and actually meeting virtually, one of my heroes. So before, we let you go, right, we have 10 more minutes, got to ask about Rock and Roll Refugee, one of the best, one of the better songs in the album, of course. It's a brilliantly glam metal with a helicopter introducing the number. So it's quite unique because it's harks back to maybe even like a mix of Gary Glitter meets Marilyn Manson's Beautiful People. Do you like it? As in, you have created it, and of course the audience decides, right? But is it one of your personal favorite as well?
Yeah, it's great fun, and I was brought up in the early 70s on glam, T-Rex and David Bowie and The Sweet and Mud, but I never felt really, it was sort of that passed quite soon, and then it was the era of punk rock when I was a teenager. But I've always had that kind of fascination and love of glam, but creatively I've been more in the kind of electronic synthesizer, kind of slightly more aggressive sort of school. So it was a kind of the idea of marrying old-fashioned glam, but with a kind of more synthetic technological edge. Do you know what I mean? Sort of based on synthesizers and a killer guitar riff, of course, just for good measure.
And Steve White contributed to the guitar riff, right?
Actually, he just played the solo. Unfortunately, I did all the stuff. I did all the guitars, and then I just needed a hell for leather guitar solo, so got Steve on the phone, and it's just great. Steve did a lot of work with me in the 90s, and I've been blessed, and I've said this before, I've been blessed to have some great guitar players work on various Pig albums. Alex Hacker from Neubauten, Carl Hyde from Underworld, Mark Gemini Thwaite, a lot of great guitarists, Ben Christo from the Sisters of Mercy, but Steve, who was in the trenches with me in the 90s, we went through together quite a lot of some quite bleak places to produce those albums, Sensation and Wrecked. And I mean, personally, it was quite a sort of a monumental mission to go as far down as I had to go to get that stuff and pull it back out and turn it into those CDs. So, me and Steve sort of lost touch for a long time. So to have him back working on this album has been great, and he just gets it. And the way he plays on the Pig stuff, to me, it's just, he's got the crunch, and he's got all the kind of hardcore concrete chugging ability or shredding or whatever the fuck you call it, but actually he's got this fantastic lyrical ability, a kind of a voice that when his guitar plays, it just does things to me.
This is absolutely brilliant. And Steve has brought so much in terms of his collaboration work with you. So in what ways do you feel that working with Sasha as well? Yeah, Sasha, how does it compare in terms of how you had worked together in the past, like maybe 16 years ago, when you worked on more KMFDM work, right? And after 16 years, you finally reappeared on Paradise.
I didn't quite get this. The audio really broke up, but I think you were asking, how does it differ working with Sasha when we were back working in the 90s and the 80s to how I work now? And how
That's correct.
Well, I think you said something about Paradise. I was just on the one track. And literally, we were chatting for the first time in ages, and it was great just to touch base again. And within 10 minutes, he just said, "Oh, I've got a track that, I mean, I think they finished their album and they had one that maybe they were having difficulty with." What he said, "Do you want to have a go with it?" He sent it over. I wrote some words, binge, boil, and blow, the very next day, and sent the files back, and that was that. KMFDM has always been a slightly different thing. In the beginning, in the 80s, when it was Sasha, Enesh, and myself, it was very much all of us contributing in a very kind of equal way. In fact, What Do You Know, Deutschland and the Unrestrained Use of Excessive Force, which I just realised recently, on the first KMF, they're actually Pig songs from the first Pig album, but they didn't have quite enough stuff. So, you know, it was a different way of working then. With Nihil, Sasha had worked on some basic riffs and things, and then Gunter would come in and do his bit, I would do my bit. And I think you had a genuine thing with that record where the whole was greater than the sum of the parts. I mean, Duke John Jezebel, for example, was everybody at the top of their game, and also some good fortune getting getting the girl, I've forgotten her name now, she was fabulous, the girl who did the backing vocals. She worked as on the desk answering the phone in the studio. Jennifer, that's right. Jennifer, fabulous Jennifer, who we had to take on tour with us a little bit later because we couldn't do it without her. And Jennifer, she was the secretary, and I was trying to build up some harmonies, and I couldn't do it. And I asked her if she happened to sing, and she said, "Yeah, so do you mind coming into the studio?" So we built up all the harmonies. There was that bit of luck that she was there. Gunter came up with the killer lick that just, you know, it takes a little bit of magic sometimes, and that's what was there.
It's absolutely brilliant, you know, listening into all these insights and behind the scenes and the production process behind all these great albums. We have 3 more minutes, so very quickly, your music, whether you will be in Pig or runway shows, right, runs the gamut from industrial metal to more ambient works, especially your work with fashion designer Alexander McQueen. So can you discuss that collaboration in detail? How did you come to actually work together?
Well, very quickly, I worked with a band called Psychic TV in the very early 80s, and one of the members of that band was a guy called John Gosling, who we had a splinter band called Zoskia with in the sort of early 80s, very experimental band. And John went on to become the musical director basically for a lot of McQueen shows. And when they needed stuff written for films, little installations and things, he came to me and I helped him out. And then Lee McQueen came and commissioned us to do stuff for the label. And it was great working with them, because you'd think a haute couture label, I mean, I didn't know anything about fashion, you'd think they'd go, "Oh, and it's got to be more fabulous, more pristine." And they were always going, "No, make it dirtier, make it filthier, make it weirder."
Must be a fantastic experience, right? So it's like something that you are always experimenting and maybe trying to even collaborate more with even more people around the world, right? So what are your plans for the next few months? Would you like to maybe collaborate with me on a microcast, which is like a under 10 minutes podcast where you ask your musician friends, a couple of questions, or up for it, even do like a Joe Rogan style podcast where you talk for like 3 to 4 hours, about mixed martial arts, CBD, or current state of the world, or anything you could think of, and you could maybe invite guests and such as Sasha or Gunter or Blixer and Ivan Novak from Leibach, and we can call it with Raymond Watts podcast. What do you think?
Well, that sounds interesting. Maybe we need to discuss that further.
Yeah, it's like anything goes, right? So it's like this is really a great honor, and it's a big thrill for me personally to finally meet you, albeit virtually. I hope that one day we'll see you perform in Singapore and bring a show back to Asia again, and not just Japan. Singapore also exists. Asia,
that would be absolutely fabulous. Well, let's hope. All we can do is sort of hope for the best, prepare for the worst, but let's hope the best comes out.
Fingers crossed. So thank you once again, Raymond. I really appreciate you, and you take care over there and keep yourself safe. Yeah.
All the best. You take care as well. Lovely talking.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Cheers. So that's Raymond Watts, founding member of PIC. And I have to repeat this again, 16-year-old me is jumping up and down that I just did that conversation with him. of course, I love industrial music. I love the community because there's a lot of collaboration. It's like during the Wax Tracks Label Day, right? Like one single member could be in like tons of other bands, like dozens of other bands. Everyone is like always collaborating, cross-pollinating with one another, and that's how the community and that scene really grew. And I absolutely love that scene, the Wax Track scene, and of course. Raymond has worked with the likes of Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails as well. So many other collaborators, KMFDM, too many to mention. So I'm really glad that we have finished this podcast and we had this great conversation with him. That's one down for the archive. So it really made my day to be able to speak to him. So I just want to maybe give a shout out to all the awesome members from the community, from the Bucket List Band podcast community who has, supported us during the entire year. I think before the pandemic started, we didn't even have this podcast birthed yet. It was after a serendipitous moment in Australia when I was attending a Tool concert. I think it was in Sydney, and one of my mates there, James O'Toole, basically agreed to come on and do a podcast with you where we talk about nothing but Tool, music, and also about a concert that we are eagerly anticipating to watch together. So it was one of those amazing experiences, and we decided to do more podcast episodes like this so that we can interact with fans, and we can also have a chance to interact with the bands that were heroes back then and even now, decades later. So it's gonna be a thrilling ride for us in 2021. We're gonna make more live streams of and interview, all these great heroes of ours, and look forward to 2021. So meanwhile, just make sure that everyone also subscribe to our Podfest Asia weekly newsletter. It's basically a community where we are bringing people from the podcasting industry in Asia and beyond, so that we can inspire them to have a sense of belonging, community, as well as tribe, which is something that I completely felt, when I listen or interact with the fans from the industrial music community groups on Facebook. So we hope to replicate that onto the podcasting industry as well. So make sure you subscribe, and our broadcast content system, or should I say the content broadcasting system on Facebook Messenger is live. So just go to m.me/PodfestAsia. I think it's right below the URL. You can see that, and subscribe to us, and you'll be able to receive free newsletters, event invites like this, where you can even show up during some of our live streams and ask some questions to our guests in person or virtually. And of course, we have a podcast replays for you as well. So make sure you look out for that and press the subscribe button. All right, so that's all from me for today. Wayne Chong, I'm the podcast host for Bucket List Band podcast. So signing off, and I wish everybody keep yourself safe, and we'll see you again for our next episode. Yeah, goodbye. Just